message about recording. We should be recording now. Did you get it, Alisa? We're good?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is September the 8th. We're doing an ISS information session just to share some important things with you. We're going to start with some introductions. So for those of you who I've already been able to meet, I'm Sharece Bunn. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Assistant Director of International Student Advising here at UW.
And my name is Alisa Sweet. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an International Student Advisor here at the UW.
So today's agenda, just going to go over this pretty quickly, and then Alisa is actually going to share quite a bit with us about CPT. So we're going to talk about curricular practical training. She'll provide an overview, talk about which CPT form to use, and you'll get more about what that is in a few minutes. She's going to share some common CPT questions from students that you might anticipate, and then some pro tips for advisor processing on your end. She's going to share a view of my ISSS, and then I will talk specifically about the ISS advising services for autumn 2022, and we do have time at the end for some questions and answers. So ready, Alisa? It's your turn.
Sounds great. Thanks, Sharece. So we did want to focus a little bit on curricular practical training. We know that a lot of international students in your departments may participate in a practicum or an internship during their time at the University of Washington. We get a lot of questions about CPT, so we wanted to start off by focusing a little bit on that. A quick process overview, just for some context. In order for a student to be authorized for CPT, they do need to first receive the job offer. CPT is authorized per position, and so we do need to see an actual job offer before we can authorize. The student needs to be registered for a course, a CPT credit. They do need to apply for CPT authorization with ISS and receive an authorized I-20 to share with their employer. That is what counts as their employment authorization, and they do need that I-20 in hand before they begin working. Just a key reminder that ISS cannot backdate CPT authorizations, so students should keep that in mind when they're choosing a realistic start date to request when to start their CPT opportunities. Next slide, please. Thank you. We do have two CPT request forms that seem very similar, but have very different functions in my ISSS. Students might submit the wrong form, or they might come to ask you which form is required. The first one, and the one that you'll likely see the most of, is the Curricular Practical Training Request Form. This is for brand new CPT requests. So anytime a student is starting a new position, this is the request they'll submit. It's also for extending a CPT request. We have changed our policy last academic year. CPT is authorized quarterly. And so if a student is participating in a CPT that will take place over multiple quarters, or if they're unexpectedly extending their CPT opportunity, they do need to submit a brand new request. And again, if it is for multiple quarters, they do need to submit this request quarterly. Any other update will be submitted through the CPT update request form. A CPT update is, for example, shortening a CPT request or canceling a CPT completely. With the canceling, it's important to note that we cannot fully cancel a CPT after the start date has passed, even if the student hasn't worked for that position. So in that case, it will look like we will be shortening to that day that we review that request form. So for shortening or canceling CPT, it would be an update. Additionally, if there is an update in the CPT credit, we would need an update form as well. These updates could be that they're changing the course that they're enrolling in, or alternatively, they're changing, if it's summer quarter, for example, they may change the quarter that they're enrolling in. That's information that we do need to see through the credit update. Our credit requirement for CPT is at minimum of 1 credit. And so if it's just that they're changing the number of credits they're enrolling in, we don't necessarily need to see that CPT update request. So we wanted to go through a couple of common CPT questions that we see from students, and we anticipate that you might see from students as well, and go over some of the more basic answers for those. What credit should I enroll in is a very common question. And It's actually very dependent on the department. So it's not necessarily the same answer for us. We always refer back to their department in these cases. Sometimes it could be an internship credit, field study, practicum. And from the last academic year, we did update our process to, policy to allow for doctorate students to enroll in their thesis credit for CPT. So that might be an option for students as well. Students might ask when they're eligible. I go into this a little bit more in a future slide, but it's really case by case. So we do have some basic guidance on our website, but if a student has more complex history or might have a question, we recommend that they come speak to an ISS advisor. When should they apply for CPT? Students need to be enrolled in their CPT credit before they can apply for CPT. And so the earliest that we can actually review an application is once that registration period starts for the quarter that they participate in CPT for. And so that's something that students should keep in mind, even if they do, for example, get an internship offer for summer quarter during the winter quarter, we won't be able to review that CPT request at that time. That said, once they have that job offer letter and once they have that enrollment, we recommend that they apply as early as possible so that we can make sure that they can get started on their desired start date. We get this one a lot. Can you expedite my CPT request? ISS serves about roughly 8,000 students, including our graduated international students. We get requests from many students for many different things. I think yesterday we might have discussed there's like potentially 65 or more different requests that we might receive from students. And so we unfortunately cannot expedite requests unless there's some sort of dire circumstances involved. Can I start working already? A student might have submitted their CPT request. It is in review or in processing, and they want to get started because the request is submitted. Unfortunately, we cannot backdate CPT requests, like I mentioned earlier, and so students should be ready to discuss with their employer if they need to delay their start date. So moving on to some pro tips for advisor processing. We have received feedback. We understand that the ISSS interface isn't necessarily the best for tracking which requests have been processed and reviewed or not. We have shared that feedback with Teradata because unfortunately that's not something that we can update on our end within the University of Washington. That said, it isn't likely that updates will happen soon. In the meantime, if there is some sort of a tracking system that works for you, that would be something that could be really helpful to develop. For me, for example, I would occasionally have requests filtered into another folder, review and delete requests, emails as they come in. That's something that's worked for me in the past. Unfortunately, we're not sure if a change in the interface is coming anytime soon, most likely not. If there is an update, we will make sure to let you know. We do get a lot of questions about department requirements for CPT and internship credit. And so clarifying those requirements early on could be helpful for students and make that process smoother when applying for CPT. With my ISSS, their request status actually can be seen and reviewed by students in their ISSS portal. And so if a student has a question about the status of their CPT request, advisors can refer students to that message. I'm going to go over really briefly what those messages might look like and what they mean at each stage in the next slide. So when students log in to my ISSS and they review their request forms, they might see their requests in the following statuses. I'm going to go over the first couple because those are kind of when they're processing in process what the students might see. Pending is the one that we get the most questions about because the language is a little bit confusing. A pending request might have been started and saved, but not yet submitted. In the pending stage, ISS has not received that request form yet, so it's kind of stuck in limbo before it gets submitted. Some students see that it's pending and think that it's been submitted and wait 3 weeks before reaching out to us. It turns out that request was never submitted to us. So if a student does have a request in pending status, they do need to hit that submit button to make sure that it does go to the next stage. Advisor review, a student's request has been sent to an external reviewer, so the academic or department advisor at that point. It hasn't been pushed into the ISS queue yet at that point. It's waiting for the advisor approval. Submitted status is when the request is submitted to the ISS advisor and it's now in our queue to be processed. Occasionally, an advisor might request clarification. In that case, their status does get updated to clarification requested. We will generally send an email to the student with the required action or required clarification. With the dismissal, we will also send an email to the student explaining why a request has been dismissed. And then this request might be approved and then completed after that. Finally, earlier I talked a little bit about student eligibility. Students may have immigration situations that impact their ability to do CPT. So you may have a student that has been enrolled for example, 2 academic years, but may have an immigration complication that doesn't allow them to do CPT at this time. It's not common. Usually our guidance on our website does show the basic eligibility requirements, but this can happen. So ISS does assess CPT eligibility on a case-by-case basis. I would always recommend that advisors refer the students to ISS if they do have any complications in their immigration record or things that might lead to additional questions. And I did want to go over what a CPT request looks like from our perspective when we're processing the request. So this is a little bit of what we see in my ISSS. And then the steps that we take in order to process these requests and the information that we really focus on when processing a CPT request. So the top section, the screenshot shows the student information section. That's what we review first in order to review eligibility information for the students. So we review their program dates, how long they've been at the University of Washington. We review their education degree level, doctorate, master's, bachelor's, and then I would review their transcript after that to ensure that they are eligible. The second step is the CPT information that the students submit to us. Some key information here is the graduating term, because the final quarter CPT might have some additional requirements or specific limitations to it. So we need to know if the student is graduating that term. The requested CPT term determines when they'll be enrolled for that CPT credit, and it also determines the dates that they're eligible to request for their CPT request. And then also the CPT must be related to the student's area of study. So we do request that students explain how their CPT opportunity is related to their major. The next step is specific employment information. So information that's specific to that CPT, the dates that they're going to be participating in CPT, as well as the employer details, name, and address. Start and end dates is something that we review on this site. It must fall within the requested quarter. As I mentioned earlier, CPT is approved quarterly, and so it does need to be within those quarter dates. CPT can't be approved beyond a student's program end date on their I-20 document. So if it is their final quarter, we need to make sure that that CPT end date is at the end of that quarter. We also review whether or not the CPT is full-time or part-time. Students are eligible to participate in both if they are eligible in either if they're eligible for CPT. Full-time is defined as more than 20 hours a week. Part-time for immigration purposes defined as 20 hours or less. The next stage is we request document uploads. We need to see the student's offer letter. In order to establish eligibility, occasionally we will need their previous transcripts, but this is not for all students. And finally, we request proof of enrollment so that we can make sure that the student is enrolled in the course that's required for CPT. Then the student will fill out the approval information section. So this is where the department advisors come in. They will include the advisor name, email, title, and department. Their phone number is optional. It's really important that the students complete this section accurately, because if there's a typo in the email or something, we might not know that we we might not know until the student points that out to us, and they may need to resubmit that request. Some students might accidentally fill out their employer information or ISS information. This section is for the department or academic advisor. The advisor will be notified via email once the student submits that request. If the request doesn't go out for some reason, or it gets accidentally deleted or filtered out, then we can send a reminder email, which will then come in as another separate request email to the advisor. So once the advisor completes their section of the form, this is what we receive on our end in ISS. Some important things that we're looking for is whether or not the advisor approves or denies that request, and that's the first circled section up top. The second section in the form, the screenshot, is basically what the student actually entered themselves. So we do review that information briefly, but underneath that, you can see that the advisor can choose whether or not the CPT is required for their program, or if it's optional. There's also a drop, so that's in the drop down that I highlighted below. If it is optional, we do require that the advisor enter the credit information for what course the student will be enrolled in and what quarter they'll be enrolled in. The advisor also then needs to check that the student is making normal academic progress. CPT, unfortunately, is not an eligible reason for a status extension. The F1 visa, it is a student visa, so the studies come foremost. And so students should be making normal academic progress even as they participate in CPT opportunities. So we do have the advisor check to make sure that they are making what's considered normal academic progress. And then finally, we have them confirm that it is related to their area of study. So that's just our basic overview of CPT. I did see a question in the chat, but I think we'll have time for questions later, Sharece. So should we just answer all of those together at the end?
Yes, let's do that.
All right, sounds good.
And you can hear me okay? Somebody said that my mic was off earlier. It's good? Okay.
I can hear you fine. Yes.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Sharece.
All right. So next, I just get to share a little bit. So our advising services have changed quite a bit from what you saw last year, 2021 to 2022. So did want to let you know of some of the cool stuff we're doing. So this autumn, we are going to have an in-person F1 employment workshop that we're encouraging all new students, continuing students to go to. This is in person on October 13th from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. It's an ECE 104. So this is a chance for F1 students to learn about on-campus employment, CPT, OPT, and the 24-month STEM extension. So if you have new students that are asking you a lot of questions about this and you're like, go contact ISS, please, rather than say, go contact ISS, send them to this workshop. We want them to come to this workshop so that we can get them in front of the information. We do have group F1 advising and information sessions again. We had these a few years ago. These are all virtual sessions and they're happening Fridays at 3 p.m. with the exception of the holidays. So like Veterans Day and Thanksgiving week, there's no sessions, but the CPT information sessions are September 30th, October 21st, and November 18th. OPT information sessions are, good question. Anyway, sorry, I looked at the chat. I'll go back to that in a second. OPT information sessions are October 7th, November 4th, and December 2nd. And then the STEM OPT information sessions are October 14th and December 9th. Then we have general F1 drop-in advising. So in-person drop-in advising is happening here in Schmitz Hall. We already started this summer, actually, late summer. So we do have it next week, but starting fall quarter, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Students can meet with an advisor. We will only be able to serve a max of 36 students. So that's important to know. Students are showing up early. We do have virtual drop-in hours for F1 students. They are required to register for the Zoom meeting. And it's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And only 24 students can be served each day. On days where we only have one advisor on those, only 12 students can be served. J1 student advising, this is only happening on Thursdays, so it's from 2 to 4 p.m. So there are virtual and in-person options, so students can find if they like how to get in contact us through the event calendar and then meet with an advisor page. And then coming soon, actually this week, the advisors are recording them. So we have CPT, OPT, and STEM OPT advising videos. So there's a series of videos basically, and there will be YouTube playlists that students can actually go through to learn about the different things. So these will be posted to our website and available for students to stream on demand from YouTube. So that's pretty good stuff to know. And we have some questions. I'm going to stop share. So May did ask something about the ECE 105. So I will double check. We had that room reserved. Our colleagues in Circle did, and I was told 104. So I'll double check if there's a different room.
I also received a couple of questions in a direct message to me regarding CPT. So would it be okay if I quickly go over those? Awesome.
Yep.
So one of the questions was, do you recommend using quarter instruction date or pay periods on their offer letter? So if this is a case of like an on-campus employment that requires CPT for some reason or another, the dates really on their offer letter, as long as it falls within the quarter dates, the quarterly approval that we do, the earliest it can start is the day after the previous quarter ended. And then the latest that it can go is the day before the next quarter begins. And so as long as it falls within that period, it should be fine. And we base those dates on the academic quarter. So the last day of the quarter will be final day of finals week, and the first day of the quarter is first day of instruction. I hope that answers the question. And then a second question, how are students learning about the info sessions and the drop-in hours? Sharece, do you want to talk about the outreach that's being done for the students?
Yeah, so students, all new students are getting that information through like emails from like either through orientation. So all of this has been shared. Like the students who are here for early fall start will have already heard. We are sending outreach messages to new incoming students, and it's also through our newsletter. So we've shared this in various different ways. Also, somebody asked me about this too. So I mean, we send tons of emails, so I'm trying not to create extra emails just about services, but there is a Meet with an Advisor page that has all of this. So we still have our early fall drop-in hours for the next 2 weeks. We have autumn quarter sessions, all of this. And if you go to, sometimes you're sent to our events calendar. It's also on our events calendar, which is a good way to, like this week, for example, our like front desk is closed. And so it wouldn't be here that it's a service. That's really important to know. There's one more question related to this. So that somebody said, is there a student sign up for the workshop, or can they just show up? We do want students to sign up because we want to make sure that we're actually getting students. We have a very, whatever space it is, which I will double check the space, but it's supposed to hold at least 200 or 250 students. So.
I also got a question about what email addresses are messages sent from for CPT requests. My understanding from the emails that we get, those emails are sent out from the student's UW email because the portal is logged in through your UW Net ID. And so the emails should be coming from the student. And then I had a question about the vacation quarter for credit registration. So students can take vacation quarters. Most students take this in the summer. Students can participate in CPT during that quarter. We allow for credit deferrals for summer quarter and summer quarter only at this time, just because we require registration for the credit before we can authorize. Autumn quarter registration begins in the spring, and so students may be registered for their autumn credit before they begin their summer CPT. So we do allow students to defer CPT credits to the autumn if necessary. And if the student is taking an alternative vacation quarter in like the autumn, winter, or spring, unfortunately, if they do CPT during that time, they need to be enrolled in that credit that quarter, even if they're enrolled only in one credit.
Alisa, Nell asked this question. So this is about my ISSS, the advisor approval for CPT. She asked about if this form works for shared UW net IDs. So like if you have a general, it does, right? So like if you use a general email account for your actual department, anybody who actually responds to that email should be able to approve it.
I believe so. I think that's what happens, for example, in like engineering. I think that's what happens. Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to read another one related to CPT if you can answer it. So I know that students must be doing work that is related to their major for CPT approval, but do the credits that they earn for CPT have to be used towards their degree? I met with a student earlier today who was hoping to earn credit for an internship that is loosely related to our major, but would not need those credits for any degree requirements.
I don't think the credit themselves, I'm sure, please correct me if I'm wrong, the credit themselves doesn't need to be a degree requirement. A lot of the time CPT is an optional thing that students participate in. So the credit doesn't need to be tied to their degree requirement. So it doesn't need to be something that falls towards that. It does need to be related to their area of study. And so that's something that we rely heavily on advisors when approving that they confirm that the opportunity is related to their area of study.
Yeah, so for me, like the credit not being required for your major, not really an issue, but the loosely idea, I mean, there has to be the connection. So drawing a stronger connection, pulling that a little tighter is important. What about this one? Is CPT required or recommended for the service learning courses where students with an F1 visa may do some volunteer work off campus?
Thank you, Sharece. So volunteer work is volunteer work for humanitarian purposes does not need authorization. If it is something that is, again, related to their major, might be considered training for the studies that they're doing. And if it is something that they may include on their resume as like training experience, we recommend doing CPT just as something that is just as a safety net, just in case. But again, volunteering for humanitarian purposes is not considered something that requires authorization.
Yeah, and I think for me, I've always like a very general way to look at this and very kind of simplistic is if this is ever going to show up on a resume, which a lot of times students will, especially if it's tied to their course, students will have wanted CPT. Kate asked, oh,
sorry,
Alisa?
I have another one. I'm getting a couple as a direct message, although this is also Kate, so I'm not sure if it's the same one. There was a question about if a student submits a CPT request that spans a period of time that's longer than a quarter, would we reject the application or approve it only for the quarter listing those dates? We would approve it listing those dates. Ideally, the student would only would request those specific dates just so that it kind of makes the process a little bit smoother and easier for all of us. But we wouldn't necessarily reject an application because the dates went over, as long as the student understands and makes sure that they check their I-20 for their authorization dates. We don't want students to think that they have been approved for that full like 2 quarters and then not reapply and not have authorization for the next quarter. So ideally the student would be picking exact dates.
There's a question here. Kate asked, as the listed advisor on a CPT application, is there any way for me to be automatically notified when a CPT is approved and or rejected? No, this is another one of those things that we have given I think a lot of schools have actually given Teradata feedback about this. I think you all have been pretty vocal about wanting more transparency and ability to see what's been approved or not approved. It doesn't happen automatically, and it would create a lot of extra work actually for us to go in and figure out like who the approver was. We're going to send out students are automatically notified, and students are the ones that we have to communicate with. So students get the email, students should know whether they have approval or denial.
I have another one, clarifying the process for students who are working over the summer but registering for their course in autumn. Basically, that last part of the advisor approval form that I shared in the screenshot, it shows when a request is, so It shows if it's an optional request, it shows the class that they need to enroll in, and it shows that the quarter that they plan to enroll in. So the advisor can then, the advisor will list the course that they're enrolling in. If they are enrolling in autumn, we would just have them list autumn 2022 or autumn 2023 or whatever year in that section of what quarter they're enrolling in. So that final question in that second portion of the advisor approval would be, what quarter are they enrolling in that credit in? I hope that answers your question, Julie.
There's a question here too about, so Joy wrote, seeing the registration piece being a key first step for CPT request, how do advisors know how many credits a student is eligible? Is there a standard metric for weekly work hours that maps to a certain number of credits? That is a great question for you all to answer on the academic side. That is not an immigration related question. So that's something that even if we have our opinions, we don't share those, because that is very much tied to academia and what the university sets the precedent. It's immigration does not have any say in that.
I have a comment from Rachel about a request coming from an email from an ISS staff member when it was sent from the student. I'm not sure if that is, Rachel, maybe we can touch base later on that, because I'm not sure if that's, I'm not sure when that was.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to point out that when I had gotten a CPT request from a student, it hadn't come from their UW Net ID, which was an issue with getting it approved. It had come through from like apparently an ISS staff member. So and the title of it was wasn't related to CPT. So maybe we could take it off. We could talk about that offline, but
yeah, definitely. I'd love to hear a little, maybe dig a little deeper in that. It could be something that was happening earlier on or something, but Sharece and I can definitely touch base with you later about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
There's a question for you, Alisa. I know you like this question. If a student is deferring CPT credit from summer to autumn for one internship, then doing a second internship in autumn, do they need 2 distinct internship credits, or could we have them register for 2 credits of the course?
Students, Sharece, please correct me if I'm wrong. We require a credit per authorization quarter. So students will be required a minimum of 2 credits, but it can be in the same course. So it can be the same. We understand that some course you can't stack the same course with multiple, like 2 separate listings and 2 credits. We can have the 2 credits be listed as one course enrollment. I do see a question about, is CPT authorization ever required for on-campus employment? It depends, and which is the case for a lot of our CPT situations. So if a student, students can work on campus without authorization for up to 20 hours a week. If a student is offered another on-campus role related to their area of study and they want to participate in that or accept that offer, they would need to be authorized. And we do authorize CPT for on-campus employment in situations like that. During their vacation quarter or during intersession, students are not limited to the 20 hours a week on campus though. So if it is kind of a summer quarter, the student is on their vacation quarter, they may not necessarily require a CPT authorization.
So there's this question, Andrew asked, can you discuss the scenario where using CPT impacts OPT eligibility? I'll take this one. It's pretty simple. So basically, if students use 365 days of full-time CPT, we will not recommend them for OPT. So we won't even recommend it because they've already maxed out their practical training eligibility. So that is how that works. Alisa, is there anything I'm missing with that? I think the number's pretty clear.
Yes, sometimes the students ask about part-time CPT and things like that as well. Part-time CPT will not impact OPT eligibility. So if the student's just doing multiple part-time CPT request, they shouldn't have an issue applying for OPT.
And just one caveat to that, or one thought about that. One of the reasons I think the CPT question has been, and that question in particular about maxing out CPT during the previous administration, there were concerns about practical training limitations. And so, 2 years from now, who knows if we're going to be talking differently about this, but for right now, the CPT eligibility and the time, we're pretty safe with regards to not maxing out that based on part-time CPT.
I'm also seeing another comment about the email for the CPT form coming from an ISS staff member's email. So it might be a process section that I'm not fully aware of. Sharece, I'm not sure if you know if it's submitted, because we get that request.
This is kind of this automated process that Teradata does, which is not, so we are not necessarily fans of it. So when students get basically when a student's request is assigned to somebody, they see our email address and they might be contacting us about it. That's definitely a function of Teradata that we're trying to get fixed, if that makes sense, because we would like it to come out of a general email, because otherwise it creates extra work sometimes on our end. But I don't know much besides just that we've given feedback to Teradata about that one. I think those are all the questions I'm seeing in the chat. Do you have any other ones that were sent directly to you?
No, I think that is all that I believe I covered all of the direct message ones as well. Alisa just asked a question about Teradata, Sharece.
Sure. Do we know if Teradata is likely to respond to feedback? Well, we sure hope so. I mean, this the Teradata software that we implemented is their newer version that's supposed to be student centered and student experience focused. They're trying to transition people across the nation, like my former institution in Wisconsin, to transfer to that. So they have certain priorities where they're not taking some feedback or they're not doing something with it. They have priorities they're setting, just like any company does. So it's helpful. Somebody asked this too. Sorry, this just came in. If a student lists the wrong person on their CPT request, can that be fixed via a CPT update request, or should they should do a new request on that one?
Yeah, I would recommend that.
Yeah, so if they mess that up, it's the easiest way, honestly, to catch it and fix it. If the student submits that second one, we can easily dismiss that old one, but otherwise, you contact us regularly, right? There's this cycle of chain of email after email. So if the student just submits a new request and does it correctly, it's going to get to an advisor faster than 3 emails sending to try to fix something. So that's the best way. Anything else? Somebody's asking a specific question. I'll follow up with this other person, so it's not a CPT question. Somebody asked a question: can students hold both CPT and on-campus positions simultaneously? If so, are they limited to a total of 20 hours during the school year?
So this is actually a question we get from students a lot as well, students, yes, they can have on-campus employment and CPT simultaneously. Those authorizations don't interfere with each other. And so hours are counted separately as long as they remain within the limits of each individual. So again, like the 20 hours a week for on-campus, and whether they've been authorized for part-time or full-time for CPT, as long as they stay within those individual hourly limits, they can do both simultaneously. So hypothetically, again, F1 visa is a student visa. So we hope that our students are, focused on their academic progress. But hypothetically, a student could be working 20 hours a week on campus and have authorization for a full-time CPT at the same time. Mm-hmm. I did get one more question in the direct message as a clarification. Can an intern that starts in the summer and ties their credit to a fall course also tie their fall CPT for that same internship to the same fall course? Yes, they can tie it to the same course. It just is that it needs to be a minimum of 2 credits if the credit is falling for the summer and autumn authorization. if that makes sense. So there needs to be 1 credit per authorized quarter. So it can be the same course for a minimum of 2 credits.
I'm going to share one more. So this was sent as a private message to me, but actually it might be applicable to more people. So this person was asking, so the student is currently on OPT, but is requesting the STEM extension. In the process of requesting the extension, she received a notice from USCIS asking for an additional letter saying that our program is STEM OPT qualified. Do we have a sample letter, and do we write it or have a suggestion? This is a great question, actually. This is not something that ISS can write the letter about. This is not like we don't oversee your academic program. We don't oversee what happens in the classroom. We're not part of that STEM designation that your department and college has worked for. So this is usually something where the dean of your school or college can actually should develop something, or there should be something written to have gotten that zip code. So you can actually write the letter of support for that. This was a huge trend a couple summers ago, actually pre-COVID, and it looks like they're still looking at this. So you can always send me a copy of that RFE that the student got about it so that I can just keep it as a record. But that's definitely not something that we write a letter about. Any other questions? Somebody asked about where we would find the recording. I will, this is going to be on YouTube because we have a YouTube channel that we're starting to use. So I will share it out with anybody who has registered. Hopefully I can get it out next week, but it will not be this week. Anyway, thank you all so much for attending, and we'll let you know when we have another session.